Hello, and welcome back to Here We Are, the mindful podcast for millennials, where it's all about remembering where we've been, knowing where we're going, and taking up space through the art of storytelling. My name is Teka, and I'm your host, and I hope that you enjoy and are inspired by the stories that I share, whether they're my own or featuring a special guest. I hope we encourage you to take control of your story and eventually take control of your life. I hope you receive what you need from today's episode, and don't forget, check the show notes for any links or articles that I referenced in today's episode. You ready? Let's journey. Alrighty, good people, welcome back. It's episode 14, and it's really funny that I'm recording this podcast today because it's all about navigating connections, and this week has actually been a challenging week for me, navigating friendships and connections. I don't know about you, but 2020 brought about a lot of change, right? Some for good, some brought a lot of challenges, but overall it changed me. And I feel like it changed me in relation to my connections and the people that I'm connected to. You see, I feel like a lot of us got really used to isolating, right? We were enjoying the space of our own company, while also getting really creative with the virtual movie dates and the game nights. And, all of that gave us a sense of connection. But we also had to social distance when we were, IRL, in real life. But something about that friendship, right? The term or the connections with my friends, something about that changed in isolation that and I'm sure a lot of others could have never predicted, right? The isolation led to loneliness. And the loneliness then eventually led to some mental health concerns and challenges. There's a term for those who really indulged in isolation. It's actually a Japanese term called hikikomori. I hope I'm saying that right. It's a social phenomenon where people withdraw from society and isolate themselves. And the term actually comes from two Japanese words that mean pulling inward and being confined. And I think that a lot of us did. We pulled inward and we ended up really spending a lot more time with ourselves than we probably did in 2018, 2019. Often my friends and I were reminiscent, right? 2018, 2019, we were outside pre-pandemic. I'm talking about going to happy hours, festivals, events, kickbacks on a weekly basis. It's safe to say that socializing was probably a part of my self-care, right? But the isolation that we had that was involuntary, right? During the pandemic, it came with a requirement to really spend time reflecting or by ourselves. And a lot of people were also isolated with others, whether you had a family or a partner, were isolated in maybe even your own pod. But regardless, we weren't able to busy ourselves with the outside world. And some of us thrived with that. While others really suffered. And in that suffering, although it felt lonely, it was a very common and global experience. Now, you might notice that I keep saying, isolation, loneliness. But what actually are the differences between being isolated and being lonely, right? Isolation or being isolated is a social and physical reality, right? It's literally detachment from others, often involuntarily. And that's coming from Merriam-Webster. But loneliness is almost like an emotion. It's a subjective human experience that has always troubled our well-being. However, the experience of loneliness is impacted by multiple factors, such as cultural and socio-political expectations and the different ways that people escape their suffering, right? Now, earlier I mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, digital technologies really enabled us to adapt to being physically isolated from one another, right? I mentioned earlier, we were able to do virtual date nights. That's how my partner, my boyfriend and I became really close and connected through online apps. We were able to have game nights. I celebrated my 30th birthday in the pandemic and I had a game night virtually that everyone hopped on Zoom, right? it required us to self-isolate, but we tried our best to connect to others in a really safe way. Although they enable us to really remain connected and in contact with people, digital technology still has had a significant impact on our relationship with the digital world, right? One significant impact that I'm not sure if a lot of people recognize or admit, I think it's becoming more of a phenomenon or more awareness around it, but that's social media addiction or digital addiction. With the rise of social media and technology, I mean, there's the influencer, there's the YouTuber, the vlogger, everybody got a podcast. But really, social media in the digital age, right? We saw a drastic increase in the amount of time that people spent online. And while it's easy to feel guilty about this or even sometimes angry, because let's be real, sometimes that addiction has caused another type of isolation or distance between people. It's important that we understand that the problem is not technology itself. The problem is that we're not taking steps to ensure that our digital experiences are balanced by meaningful real world interactions. I know I can speak for myself that if I'm going through a challenging or stressful time, I have my different ways to escape, right? I might listen to music, listen to a podcast, watch TV, but escapism from the issues we face in the real world, for some has caused that addiction because it was all they had, right? If someone didn't have, someone in their home with them, like I was a single person, isolating, I lived by myself. And so I didn't really have anyone to isolate or quarantine with. And so I had my phone, I had my TV, I had my devices, right? And although I really enjoyed connecting through those like really creative virtual ways, I mean, I know everyone remembers Club Quarantine with DJ D Nice, like that and Versus, all of that was birthed out of quarantine and out of us trying to form this connection. But I think in some ways it almost formed a false sense of connection. Follow me. We may have thousands of followers and friends and likes, but still can feel disconnected and alone. I mean, raise your hand if you can say, every single person on your friends list. And when I say no, I don't mean no of, I mean no, right? It's possible to have a whole bunch of friends and followers and still feel alone. And this is because these connections are superficial, right? They lack depth. Scrolling through my feed, liking a post, that may give me a little dopamine spike, right? I may feel good about that temporary sense of engagement, but there's no real emotional connection, right? There's this constant barrage of notifications. Like, I don't know about you, but I hate seeing the little red number on my phone. So the notifications, I'm constantly getting those likes. I'm constantly seeing who liked this, who did this, who put this, who's starting a live video, who's, commenting on this post. And that can create pressure to present with a curated version of ourselves. I mentioned earlier the influencer, the vlogger, the podcaster. All of these people are curating, right? Even me, I have to curate my feed for the podcast Instagram. I'm curating the feed on the podcast YouTube. I'm curating and producing these podcast episodes. And having to do that for the podcast is one thing, but some of us feel like we have to do that for our real selves, right? We feel like we have to present a facade or pretend or a version of ourselves online that can really be overwhelming and hinder us from having genuine connections, right? And I think that this was not something that just started in the pandemic. So let me be clear, but I think the pandemic just proved how merged our physical and digital worlds really have become since the inception of the digital world. And it just really raises questions of how we differently communicate now, and how the digitalization of our social lives really relates to modern feelings of loneliness, anxiety, depression, social exclusion, the hikikomori that I mentioned earlier. And so a lot of those impacts, me, I want to talk about our mental health, how it's affected our mental health, how it has affected the way that we think, that we behave, the way that we feel. According to a recent study Y'all know I'm gonna give y'all some statistics. Loneliness is an epidemic in the United States, with over 40% of adults reporting feeling lonely on a regular basis. That is a lot. That means that 4 out of 10 people feel lonely. It's important to understand that loneliness and social isolation can definitely have negative impacts on our mental health, right? So that includes, like I said earlier, anxiety, depression, stress, low self-esteem, substance abuse, antisocial behaviors, which is like that hikikomori I mentioned earlier, or extreme social anxiety, cognitive decline, so our memory loss, and even suicidality. Now, what are we supposed to do with all this information, you may be asking? Well, I want to talk about how we can connect and combat the negative effects of the digital world. Again, it's not all negative. I know that the digital world is a blessing and a curse, right? Because it's given us an opportunity to really stay in constant contact with people, especially those that may live far. I have family that live overseas. A lot of people are in the military, or, they may be across the country, even across the city. It helps us to stay connected. But really, we want to reconnect in a way that's genuine. Let's kind of try to bounce back. We can't go back to ourselves of 2019, 2018. We might have to just accept that those versions of ourselves are gone. But what we can do is be intentional about reconnecting and getting back to ourselves, into our genuine connections. So first thing I need y'all to write down is quality over quantity, meaning genuine connections with few over superficial connections with many. So that means prioritizing face-to-face interactions. Like, I just had dinner with one of my best friends since high school today, right? And we live probably like an hour and a half from each other. So it's not super far, but it has been challenging for us to get together because since 2019, 2020, a lot has changed in our worlds. And so we have to really be intentional and prioritize face-to-face interaction. So I actually want to challenge y'all to schedule a face-to-face meetup with a friend or a loved one this month, right? We just started October. Reach out to somebody and prioritize that. Build up the quality of your connections, right? Invest in them. Instead of accumulating a whole bunch of superficial ones, and I'm not saying that every connection you make on the internet is superficial, because I've really connected to some people through the internet. I've never met them face to face, right? But we genuinely enjoy each other's company. The quality of our relationships has been shown to impact our mental health more than the quantity. So if you really want to address loneliness, you need to choose quality over quantity, right? Relationship quality can affect our health by influencing psychosocial factors such as our mood, motivation, our coping skills, our friends and family, the people that we're connected to. They can influence our health-related behaviors, such as our eating and our exercise habits. And so together, those pathways have come together and now have created long-term outcomes for our physical and psychological health. So if you're thinking about who and what is impacting your mood, your habits, I'm sure you want quality connections over quantity. Number 2, authenticity. Now, earlier I mentioned that a lot of these connections are curated, or a lot of these online presences are curated, right? Vulnerability is the key to authentic connection. So we must take off the mask. Authenticity and vulnerability form the foundation of human connection. It's all about being genuine, vulnerable, showing up as our truest selves. And if you're asking me, Teka, I don't know even what my truest self is. I'm trying to figure out who that is now. It's okay to say that. You can take those steps with a therapist, with a coach, even do your own work of trying to discover and figure out who that is again. What are my values? What do I enjoy doing? What are what is my purpose? What are my intentions? Right? Ask yourself some of those questions and reflect and figure out who you are so you can show up as that person, right? It's really about saying, I can't wear these filters from Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok in real life, right? Those were crafted to dominate online interactions, right? But embracing our own true selves is very crucial when you're trying to reconnect in this digital age, right? So think about it. There are some people online, myself included, who really share our true thoughts, right? We share our true thoughts, our true feelings, our beliefs, our values, our opinions. And I would say that has helped to build community. That's helped us to connect with each other on a deeper level and encourages reciprocity. Like I said, I've met people online and connected with them because there is a reciprocity in us being genuine and authentic with each other. And I hope I meet a lot of y'all in real life one day because y'all are my people. Authenticity and connecting in that way also helps us to feel like we belong and we have the support where it's needed, right? Because when I'm honest and open about what I'm going through, that means that someone can either come alongside me and offer support or they can offer help and assistance. And that helps me to feel like, okay, great. Like I have my people, I have support, I have what I need. And that is what is known as that connection, that reconnection we're looking to do. And so another way that you can form those connections is through seeking out activities and groups that align with our interests and values. Like I remember when I moved to the city, I immediately joined a civil and community organization. I joined a church. I have, sorority sisters who are in the area. And so that helps you to feel like you have somewhere to connect. So if you're thinking about it, what do I do now? So join a book club, right? Start volunteering. Get involved with things that you care about and engage in those activities that you enjoy, because eventually you're more than likely to meet like-minded individuals who share your passions and you can build genuine connections with them, right? More quality, authentic connections. Also, I think I might have talked about this in the Gifts of Imperfection, but comparison. Social media, if anything, has literally caused us to see people's highlight reels, right? And we are often comparing ourselves to a representative of other people. And so I want to encourage you to challenge any negative thoughts that come up when you compare yourself, right? Be curious about maybe what you see that's posted. Be inspired by it instead of jumping to conclusions, right? You can ask yourself, I wonder how they feel about, or I'm curious about that experience, instead of saying, I bet they're so happy and have everything that they or I want, or I'll never be as popular, influential, well-connected as them, right? Saying those things are just perpetuating that comparison, that low self-esteem, that low confidence, and that feeling of not belonging. Instead, come up with alternative or affirming thoughts. Say something different. And I'm going to give you all 5 examples of some affirmations to say when you are feeling discouraged or comparing yourself. And I'm going to read them to you all. The first is, I am unique and invaluable just the way I am. My authenticity shines through and makes me special. My worth is not determined by others' opinions of me. I am worthy simply because I exist and have inherent value as a human being. I embrace my social anxiety as a part of who I am, knowing that it doesn't define my worth or limit my potential. I am deserving of love, acceptance, and belonging, regardless of any perceived inadequacies. I attract positive relationships that appreciate my true self. And the last one, each day, I choose to step out of my comfort zone and demonstrate my authenticity to the world. I trust in myself and believe that I deserve all the happiness and success life has to offer. So, do a quick review, and I hope that those affirmations resonated, even at least one resonated with y'all. So we got quality over quantity, right? Genuine connections, invest in your connections, and really find activities with people that have, similar interests and passions. 2, authenticity, take off the mask. Practice vulnerability, practice showing up as your truest self. And 3, decrease comparison. Now, the last one Or number 4 is the premise or the pedagogy of this podcast, mindfulness. Be very mindful of your social media use. This really means just being conscious of the emotions that arise while you are using these platforms, whether it's stress, anxiousness, depression, right? You might want to consider limiting your usage to just maybe an hour or 2 per day instead of scrolling endlessly for 5 hours just to go to bed, right? Or maybe scrolling through Instagram kind of perpetuates this feeling of loneliness, right? Maybe it's time to step away from the app and find other ways to fill your time with positive experiences. Read a book, start journaling, start a craft, right? Find other ways to occupy your time that really refill your cup and pour into your self-confidence instead of scrolling and constantly comparing yourself. And then the same way that you followed those people on your timeline that you're comparing yourself to, you can unfollow them. You can curate your online content, right? By carefully choosing who you follow and making sure that you connect yourself online to people or things that promote positivity rather than negativity, right? We are scrolling down, Twitter or X, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and our news feeds are bombarded with images and words that are not always uplifting or helpful, right? And this can really affect us. So it's okay for you to choose carefully what shows up on your feed. Be mindful of your social media use. All right, y'all. So take those 4 steps, take those 4 tips, take those four ideas, and really ask yourself, what do I want to do more of so that I can feel reconnected in this digital world? What do I want to really focus on so that I can decrease these feelings of loneliness, even if I happen to be isolated? Decrease these feelings of loneliness so that I can feel like, hey, even if I am alone, I'm not lonely. I'm still connected. So I'll leave you all with this. The COVID-19 pandemic and the mental state of those who are socially withdrawn reiterate the importance of physical and face-to-face contact for our survival and well-being. But despite its sometimes negative effects, technology may also be how people escape loneliness and isolation. As Prime Minister Taro Aso pointed out with Pokemon Go's therapeutic powers, one thing is for certain. We must evolve with technology and adjust our behaviors towards it so that we can benefit from it. And that was from an article that I will link below by G. Grangy called Are We Losing Touch? Looking at Loneliness and Isolation in the Digital Age. All right, y'all. So all about reconnecting in the digital world in this digital age. I hope that was helpful. I'm going to even try some of these things. I definitely want to be more mindful about my social media use. I think that online or the digital world has proven to be really beneficial for me. It's helped me to connect to clients. It's helped me to connect to you all through the podcast, through blogs, through, social media. But I have a life outside of all this. All right, y'all. So let's go ahead to our next segment, gift. This is our gratitude practice. The G stands for goal or gratitude. The I is for intention. The F is for faith or focus. And the T is for take action. Practice this with me, every other week. I pop up on your podcast feed, and that gives you an opportunity to remember, oh yeah, let me practice my gratitude today. So for this exercise, or for this practice, I'll share mine. My G is the advances in the gift of technology, right? It helped me to build community, helped me to launch passion projects, stay in contact with my loved ones during the pandemic and beyond, really, before the pandemic, really. And so I'm grateful for the advances of it. I just want to and my intention is actually the next thing is to make 1% changes so that I can continue to connect or reconnect IRL in real life, right? My intention is authenticity and to be okay with how I've changed. My F is to be mindful. of my social media use, right? So if I notice that I'm starting to compare myself, or if I notice that I'm starting to feel more sad than uplifted, I might need to take a step back. NT, my take action is to schedule more face-to-face with my loved ones. Like I said, I just had dinner with my best friend. I'm trying to get more face-to-face and FaceTime dates on the books, but I really want to spend more time with my loved ones. I love my home. I love my plants. I love, being here in the comfort of my couch, watching some Apple TV, but IRL interactions are nice too. And as Ari Lennox said in her song New Apartment, we can't survive alone. All right. Next is our last segment of the podcast, and that is Vibe Tunes ATM. I was driving home today and the song came on the radio and I forgot all about it. Well, I didn't forget all about it, but I really did. I hadn't heard it in so long. And it really spoke to my heart and the heart of that I have for others who are experiencing depression, anxiety, loneliness, low self-esteem, just all of the harmful or negative impacts on our mental health due to isolation and loneliness. And the song is called Be Blessed by Yolanda Adams. And it's basically talking about, I just hope that your soul is blessed, that your home, your connections, your friendships, your heart, everything about you is blessed, knowing that God is going to work it out for you, that you don't have to, isolate or be alone in this world. Someone is praying for you. And that's my hope and wish for you. I know that living in this digital world can be a lot and overwhelming at times. And so know that if you're listening to this podcast, my prayer for you is that you be blessed. And my second Vibe Tune ATM is actually this song called Eyes for You by an artist named Haben, Haben. I actually heard her sing. She was one of the opening acts for Coco Jones. I saw Coco Jones in concert beginning of September, Labor Day weekend, and the opening acts came and I was like, who is this? And she actually has, I think, another song. Haben has been featured on a couple other artists' songs, including, I want to say Trevor Jackson. But her voice is beautiful. And so I ended up listening to one of, I think, the only full project she has up there. She has a couple singles, but the full project she has up there. And one of the songs is called Eyes for You. And I really like it. So check out the Vibe Tunes ATM playlist on YouTube and let me know what you think. All right, y'all. Well, I want to say thank you so much again for listening to Here We Are, the Mindful Podcast for Millennials. Let's connect on Instagram at the Here We Are Pod, Facebook at Here We Are Podcast with Teka, and on YouTube at Here We Are Pod. If you're loving the podcast, I'd be so honored if you go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, rate and leave me a review, comment on Instagram and Facebook and on YouTube. And if you want to share your story, right? If you have feedback to share, email me at theherewearepod@gmail.com. Remember that your story can inspire and encourage others. So now I want you to breathe in the now, stay here in the present moment. Take care.